By this point, you're probably starting to wonder if we hate ourselves over here at Triple Jump Towers, but we're pleased to assure you that that's not the case. Instead, we put ourselves through the agony of all these terrible titles for you, the viewer. I know, we're a selfless bunch. For this list, it's time to shine a bright light in 2003's eyes while we force it to confess its various sins. As always, to be eligible for this list, a game must have received at least 7 professional reviews, which means that for the first time in the admittedly short history of these lists, we're going to give an honourable mention. Because who could talk about the worst games of 2003 without giving a shout out to Big Rigs Over the Road Racing, a game that missed out on being included as it only received 6 professional reviews, but with a score of just 3.83% on Game Rankings, it's not only the worst game of 2003, but it's also one of the worst games ever made. Big Rigs, we salute your abhorrence. With all that done and dusted, I'm Ashton from Triple Jump, and here are the 10 worst games of 2003. Number 10, Terminator 3 War of the Machines for PC, 27.67% on Game Rankings. Well, buckle up viewers, because we're kicking off this list with a game that is worse than the several that have taken the number 1 spot in previous years. Had it been released in the 90s, Terminator 3 War of the Machines would have run away with the title, but alas, it turns out that 2003 was such a terrible year in the world of video gaming that it only just makes it onto this list. A first-person shooter with a heavy emphasis on online multiplayer, Terminator 3 War of the Machines sees players joining either the Skynet machines or the TechCom humans and then battling it out in a number of different gameplay modes. Part of the problem was that War of the Machines released not long after Battlefield 1942 and seemed to take everything that the World War II title did right and then just completely bungle it. Naturally, the graphics weren't great, the sound was rubbish, and the level design was lackluster. However, one of the most serious issues was the online element, as limited servers meant that most people struggled to find games. Not that they were missing out on much, but still not good for a game whose primary focus was multiplayer. Number 9, MTV's Celebrity Deathmatch, PC, 27.42% Game Rankings. Have you ever wanted to see Marilyn Manson and Busta Rhymes fight to the death in a wrestling ring? No? Well, neither have we. But clearly somebody did. And so we ended up with MTV Celebrity Deathmatch, a game released on Halloween 2003, presumably because of how terrifyingly bad it was. The game was based on the claymation TV show of the same name, however, unlike its television counterpart, which was reasonably successful, the game was absolute garbage. The main problem was that it had neither of the things that made the show so entertaining: the claymation style and the sense that each celebrity had their own personality. Although the roster of celebs was reasonably impressive, there was nothing else about Celebrity Deathmatch that players found entertaining. Each character had a limited moveset, and the control system was so basic that just mashing the attack buttons over and over again would ensure victory. It's also incredibly short, with the episodes mode taking players around 90 minutes to complete in its entirety, and once they were done with that, it was really just a case of rinse and repeat. Still, if you're the kind of person that would enjoy seeing Mr. T and Frankenstein duke it out, then you might have gotten a laugh out of Celebrity Deathmatch. Number 8, Mucha Lucha Masqueraders of the Lost Code for the Game Boy Advanced, 26% on Metacritic. Here we are with yet another game whose only mission in life was seemingly to tarnish the good name of the television show that spawned it. Mucha Lucha Masqueraders of the Lost Code follows a trio of aspiring wrestlers as they enroll in the International School of Lucha. Shockingly, the code of masked wrestling had been stolen, and it's up to the protagonist to find it or face expulsion. Though it may sound like a fun premise, Mucha Lucha fails to deliver on anything that would make it entertaining. It retains the art style of its TV counterpart, however the animation is jerky, and the whole thing seems more like a cheap imitation than a loving homage. Players also found the game to lack any sort of challenge. Although each character allegedly has around 15 different moves to play with, most found that just mashing A would result in success in the vast majority of the time. It didn't help that a lot of enemies didn't bother to fight back, so it's just a case of walking up to them and smashing the same button over and over again until you won. Mucha Lucha was an enjoyable kids show, and it's a shame that the game developer didn't put the same love and care into Masqueraders of the Lost Code. Number 7, Stake Fortune Fighters for the Xbox, 26% Metacritic. If I had a penny for every terrible fighting game there's been over the years, I'd probably have enough money to make my own terrible fighting game. It would be called Billy Ray Brawlrus, and it would be so bad that it's actually quite good. Stake Fortune Fighters put players into the shoes of one of 8 different characters and had them fighting their way across large arenas alongside 3 other AI or human players. Though, good luck finding 3 friends who'd be willing to play this tripe. There was no System Link or Xbox Live support, so if you were going down the multiplayer route, you were forced to play via split screen, which was only necessary owing to how stupidly big the levels were. If you were able to get past the split screen, then you'd be rewarded with gameplay that required little in the way of skill, with button mashing being the order of the day, characters that looked like they'd been copy-pasted from generic Fighter Town, and graphics that probably would have been impressive had they been on the PS1. On the plus side, Stake did utilise the Xbox's custom soundtrack capability, so at least players could listen to their favourite tunes whilst having an awful time. Number 6, Aquaman, Battle of Atlantis on the GameCube, 25.1% on GameRankings. One of the most hated tropes in video gaming is the water level, and many gamers agree that a misplaced moist segment can ruin even the best of games. So why would anyone think it's a good idea to make an entire game that's basically one big janky water level? Aquaman, Battle for Atlantis tells the story of the titular Damp Lad and his efforts to save the people of Atlantis from the dastardly Black Manta. Most critics were already dubious as to how interesting a game about Aquaman could possibly be, with many voicing the opinion that there were far better DC superheroes to feature in a game. Once they got into it, however, they found that they were right to doubt Battle of Atlantis, as the gameplay was made up of repetitive missions that consisted of locating a cluster of enemies and giving them what for. In addition, Battle of Atlantis had all the signifiers of a bad game: fuzzy graphics, a camera with a mind of its own, and a suspicious lack of content. Suffice it to say, this is one title we'd be happy to leave at the bottom of the ocean. Number 5, Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Battle 22 on the PlayStation, 25% Metacritic. Say what you want about Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Battle 22, but at least it was better than the atrocious live-action Dragon Ball Z movie from 2009. It's still not good, but, you know, silver linings and all that. Though it was released in Japan and Europe in 1996, Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Battle 22 didn't see North American release until 2003, though upon reflection, it should have probably been contained to as small of an area as possible. One of the main problems that the North American audiences had with the game was that it felt so dated in comparison to other fighting games that were coming out at the time. And in fairness, it was a 7-year-old PlayStation title, so those criticisms were not unfounded. Some were pleased with the large roster of characters, with players being able to choose from one of 27 familiar faces. However, this wasn't enough to butter them up. Aside from the overall datedness of the game, which encompassed everything from the graphics to the sound design, critics complained about the lack of a story mode, the unresponsiveness of the controls, and its slow gameplay. If anyone does happen to find all of the Dragon Balls, could they perhaps wish this game out of existence? Number 4, Batman Dark Tomorrow on the Xbox, 24.06% GameRankings. A while ago, we took it upon ourselves to rank every Batman game from best to worst, and you'll never guess which one was found to be the absolute worst of the worst. It's this one, Batman Dark Tomorrow. That was the worst. Though the game garnered some limited praise for the variety of lesser-known villains that it wheeled out, that was more or less where the compliments ended. When it was unveiled at E3 2001, things looked fairly promising for Batman Dark Tomorrow. The presentation was cinematic, the visuals were dark and gritty, and Batman himself looked like he'd been able to kick some serious villain butt. Sadly, this was a huge misrepresentation of the game, because what players ended up with was nothing short of a joke. Many critics found the game to be near unplayable, citing the fixed camera and complex controls as the main things that caused them to rapidly eject the game from their consoles, and, if they were lucky, their memories. The graphics were also pretty awful, the frame rate was naff, and the voice actors didn't phone in their performances, but rather send them in the post without a stamp. Oh well, at least audiences only had to wait 6 years for Arkham Asylum. Number 3, Pulse Racer for the Xbox, 24% on Metacritic. We can only assume that developer Jaleco were going for ironic naming conventions when they decided to dub their 2003 driving game Pulse Racer, because about the only thing less exhilarating than playing it would be going round to your Nan's and helping her organise her doily collection. Yes, Nan, I know. White and ivory are different colours. I've already made different piles, okay? Though Pulse Racer did its best to differentiate itself from other racing titles on the market with its unique premise, Sadly, that wasn't enough to earn it any fans. Unlike other racing games, Pulse Racer opts to have the driver's health linked directly to their cars, so if players try to push them too hard, they'll suffer a heart attack. Unfortunately, Jaleco forgot the cardinal rule of trying something new, and that's that you need to nail the basics first before you start tacking on wacky concepts. Though the graphics weren't bad and the controls were okay, the main problem with Pulse Racer was that it just wasn't very fun to play. The tracks were bland, the cars were incredibly generic, and the AI races were horribly unbalanced. In fact, the only time anyone's heart rate was likely to go up was when they rage quit the game. Number 2, Charlie's Angels on the GameCube. 23% on Metacritic. So you may remember Charlie's Angels from its appearance on Worst Games Ever, during which we had a wonderful time laughing at Alex Monday's outrageous dance moves. From there, things only go downhill, and what players ended up with was one of the worst games ever made. The plot follows Natalie, Alex and Dylan as they attempt to recover the stolen Statue of Liberty. It's best if you try not to think too hard about the logistics of that one, to be honest. Aside from the slightly bizarre narrative, Charlie's Angels had a whole heap of other problems for players to contend with. The graphics and animations were horrible, suffering from numerous glitches, stiff-looking movements, and seemingly random invisible walls. It was also plagued by clunky controls and a weird camera that basically faced whichever way it wanted. Not that that particularly mattered, because even on the hardest difficulty, the game is so easy to beat that you could do it blindfolded with one hand behind your back. So the control and camera problems at least helped to pose a challenge. The entire thing was a complete dumpster fire, and one which not even the sweetest of dance moves would have been able to save. And number 1, Drake of the 99 Dragons on the Xbox, 20.47% on Game Rankings. On paper, Drake and the 99 Dragons doesn't sound awful. The plot follows Drake, an undead assassin, who embarks on a quest for vengeance after his clan is murdered. It's a solid premise, it's just a shame that developer IdleFX completely bungled the execution. The Xbox version in particular drew the ire of most critics, achieving a dismal score of just 20.47% on Game Rankings. Although 1 or 2 reviews gave praise to Drake's unique art style, which in its defense was quite cool, that was pretty much the only nice thing anyone had to say about it. Among its faults were its controls and gameplay, and though the dual-wielding system sounded great in theory, in practice it ended up being a frustrating experience, mostly because the targeting system was a complete mess. The voice acting was also atrocious, the disjointed cutscenes made the plot difficult to understand, and the sound design was a cacophony of stock sounds stolen from AOL Messenger. So, congratulations, Drake of the 99 Dragons, you'll forever be known as the official worst game of 2003. Just rest easy in the knowledge that you're at least 5 times as good as Big Rigs Over the Road Racing.